Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Show. Game 4, NBA Finals. Hopefully not the last game, but it's not up to me. It's up to Luca and Kyrie and the Mavs as they're down 3-0. Game 4 back in Dallas once more. We'll see if this thing goes a little bit longer. I've got 5 bets already for it as I'm recording this for you on Thursday. Just a day of rest here for both of these teams. So going to be taking that into consideration for sure. Quick reminder, also going to have the live stream 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday, 3 hours or so before tip, so we can jump in there and get some more bets out there. A lot of player props. I've got a couple actually sides and totals here in this one on top of those player props that we normally get. Also going to have WNBA action on Friday in a video, so make sure you check that out as well. Until then, let's get right into Game 4. A couple takeaways we want to check out here from Game 3 first, though. Dallas, they're going to play whomever is best at center in that particular game. I called that out before Game 3, saying, I don't think you want to fade Derek Lively. I didn't have the stones necessarily to put anything on him, but the Rook coming back home and without Kristaps Porzingis, probably most importantly, meant that he was likely to have a better game than Gafford, and that was the case. As a result, he sees nearly 30 minutes. Gafford sees about 16. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with either of those guys here in Game 4, so I would be cautious betting on either of them, although I do lean Lively once again without KP back in the game for Game 4. The other thing, comeback be damned, man. Boston dominated this game. I mean, what the weirdest part about that game was Joe Mazzulla started playing a 3-man weave essentially at the top of the key in the fourth quarter, hoping to end that thing with 6 minutes left. It was like, you don't have time to waste time on the clock. You need to score still because Dallas is scoring and finally shooting well in that fourth quarter, despite Luca not doing that much. The others started to come around, including Kyrie and PJ Washington. Other than that, that like 6 minute stretch though, Dallas was bad, man. I mean, and Boston was really good, and really that 3-point shooting continues to dominate them. Interestingly, Derrick Jones Jr. only played 15 minutes in this last game. He might not be long for the series either. I mean, he can't really help them on offense with the shot that he's putting up. Airballed a 3 in Game 3 as well, and then it was just like, all right, lights out. He's not really bothering Tatum, so what's the purpose of having DJJ on the court? Keep an eye on guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. getting a few more minutes in this one, probably even more so than Jaden Hardy, who didn't really see much time in this last game either. And like I was saying about the dominance for Boston, 24 more points that they scored off a 3. Now, Dallas had 16 more points in the paint, and they lost by, what was it, 7, right? I believe it was 106-90, or yeah, 106-99, right? So 7 points right there. That 8 points, that disparity between how much more Boston scored from 3 and how many more Dallas scored in the paint really was the difference in the game. 3 is worth more than 2. So Boston's just going to continue to go with that strategy as they have all season, which is kind of why I don't know that we're going to get a Game 5. But let's get right into my first bet here for this game. Kicking it off with a first quarter bet for Kyrie DeGod, who finally showed up there in Game 3. Obviously still wasn't enough, but now he's come alive early in the first quarter of these games in the last 2, and I love the plus money we get for that nice 6 number there, which means 3 2s. Obviously a 3 in there would help us out a ton, but he's taking about 5 shots per game in the first quarter. In the last 2, he got 8 points and 9 points respectively, 9 points in Game 3 in the first quarter. And in the last 10 games, he's really started to come around a lot more, at least with his involvement in the first quarter, which is what I'm looking for here. Is, do we get the volume of shots and minutes for Kyrie? Is he being aggressive early, or is he still watching Luca in the first half and then waiting for the second half to come out? Nah, he's here to stay in the first part of the games now. So 5.5 is a beautiful number for plus 108 for Kyrie. 10 minutes, 5.5 shots in those last 10 games in the first quarter. That's a good enough volume for me to feel really good about him making 3 of those babies to get us to 6 points, right? Especially when he's playing away from TD Garden, where he has been terrible. After like 1 good performance in a return back to Boston after leaving the team, obviously. Since then, ton of bad games every time he goes back there. I think he was pretty excited to get out of Boston and back home, where he's actually played better now in the postseason, as opposed to what he did in the regular season. He was actually a little bit better on the road, or at least he stood out a little bit more. But at home, really, really good in the playoffs, not quite as good on the road here in the postseason. I do think those shooting woes are behind him. Like I said, a lot of that has to do with him not playing in TD Garden. So we're going to feel good about him maintaining at least a decent and pretty solid 3-point percentage, as well as regular field goal percentage. Getting to the line a little bit, not as much as you might like, but still, those shots are starting to fall. He made some really tough ones against Drew Holiday. We're going to bank on him to come out strong once again in the attempt to prolong this series at least. How about a little same game parlay for some trays to fall? We're going to take PJ Washington 2+ and Derek White 3+ threes made in this game. Parlay that gets us plus 112 on DraftKings. So I really like the look of this here for plus money for something that I feel, two things that I feel like are very, very likely to happen here, especially because we get PJ Washington back at home. Nobody on the Mavs has had a more stark difference between the three-point shooting on the road and at home for this Dallas Mavs team. He's over in 7 of 9 in the playoffs, and he actually went under this number, only hitting 1 3 in the first 2 games at home against the Clippers all the way back in that opening round series. Now, in the last 7 games since that series, at least 2 threes at home in all 7 of those home games in the postseason. So we're feeling like this is a number that we should continue to hit for him, especially because the volume has raised back up to what they need it to be for the Mavs to win. They need this to be their third scorer. He looked really good in the first couple games going to the basket, but that's when he had Al Horford on him in the first 2 games of this series. Last game, and really the second half of game 2 into game 3, we saw Derek White start to be the primary defender on PJ Washington, which meant not going to be as easy to drive around a really good and quick defender like Derek White. Not the same as playing against 38, 39-year-old Al Horford, whose fleet of feet is not quite the same, right, at this ripe old age. And so he was able to drive by Al, but not necessarily shoot over him. Now we've got Derek White in there. Complete opposite. He's able to shoot over Derek White. Not as easy to get around him. So I like these attempts to stay up where they have been now. In the last 7 at home, averaging 8.1 3-point attempts per game. A lot better than those first 2 where he was trying to figure out how to play in the playoffs, to be honest. A lot different than being in Charlotte where you never have to prepare for the playoffs. So I like the way that PJ's playing now. I like the fact that the Derek White matchup does allow him to shoot a little bit more and not worry about getting blocked out there in the 3-point line. And for Derek White, what do you want me to say, man? This dude's an incredible postseason performer. He's shown that now 2 postseasons in a row, especially from 3. We've seen a lot of that great ball movement for the Celtics around the key, and with the Derek White 3. I actually thought it would be a little bit more Drew Holiday getting some love and getting some more threes in the corner. But now it's been Derek White actually a little bit more above the break as it starts in the corner and the ball makes its way all the way around to the weak side where Derek White is standing waiting for a nice open shot. And to be honest, he doesn't even have to be that open. He's still pulling it. He is one of the main contributors, if not the main contributor, to that Boston 3-point barrage, or as Mike Breen called it, the Celtic tsunami that comes once a game at least, where they just hit a bunch of threes in a row. And D. White's always a part of that. 3.5 threes made in the playoffs on 8.1 attempts. Nice average there. Really good number for us to take 3. His core line is 4. He's 3.5, so he needs to hit 4. I'm just taking him to hit 3 in this one. Still getting nicely over plus money when I combine that with PJ Washington as well. How about some unders, though? I've got to go back to my fourth quarter under 50.5 bet. It was 51.5 last game, but we had to take minus 118 for it. Now we get close to even money here at minus 105 on DK for this game, this fourth quarter, to go under 51 points. Rinse, recycle, repeat. Once again, 46 points per game in the fourth quarter of the finals this year, and the game slows down to a 91 pace. So everything puckers up. Everybody tightens up, right? We know that it's going to be a really close, probably going to see Boston having an opportunity in the fourth quarter to end this thing, right? Which is going to tighten up a lot, honestly. And they'll probably keep the defense high. I know that for Boston. But it's late, man. It's game 100 here for the Celtics. It's like 105 or whatever for the Mavericks. It's going to start to show, and it already has in this series and really in the finals in general. If you look at the finals in the last couple seasons, including this one now, we're talking about 47 points per game in the fourth quarter, right? That's the last little note there. But I would also just throw it out there that the second half is really the pace and the offensive ratings for these teams really indicative of how late in the season it is, how tired legs start to come through in the second half of games, especially for guys like Luca and Kyrie, who are doing all of the work, right? About a 65% usage rate between the two of them now in the last game, and overall in this series, about a 55% usage rate combined, meaning these two guys are the ones ending with the shot coming from one of them, right? And then you also need to play defense against all 5 3-point shooters that are always on the floor for the Celtics. And I'm throwing Xavier Tillman in there as well, because our man hit a 3 in the last game, which means nobody except for Luke Cornett is incapable of hitting threes when they get on the floor for the Boston Celtics. And I don't think we're going to be seeing Luke Cornett for a reason. They always want to have 5 guys that can shoot. That tires everybody out on the Mavs. And as far as the Celtics go, like, I also think things are going to tighten up. I mean, they have 101 offensive rating in the second half of this series in all of the 6 quarters that we're talking about here in the second half of the finals. Dallas a little bit better, but they've been worse in the first half. But 107 offensive rating in the second half, not good, right? We've seen the first quarter do the bulk of the damage when it comes to scoring. That's really the only quarter that's consistently gone over 50. In fact, the second quarter has been lower scoring than the fourth quarter. Just don't want to necessarily rely on that, but makes sense with the way the rotations work. You usually see one of Luca and Kyrie, they start to stagger a little bit more in the second quarter in terms of the rotation for when they're playing. So the second quarter will also contribute. And if you're listening right now and not just watching on mute and reading this and just moving along, then you're going to get the benefit of hearing me also say, I'm going under 211.5, putting that in the Discord. So definitely want to make sure you're in there if you're not yet. A lot of early bets coming your way. I gave out this final bet that the Kyrie bet in the first quarter. I gave out in the Discord early as soon as I found it to make sure that everybody in there gets the juice, but also throwing the under 211.5 total for the whole game. I mean, this series is averaging 201 points per game. Why it's still at 211 is beyond me. I suppose you could say there's going to be some positive regression coming and the 3-point shots will start falling a bit more. I don't know why you would say that, especially for Dallas, who, continues to get completely dominated on the perimeter. So going under in the fourth quarter total for a nice -105, going under 211.5 for the game total as well for -110 on MGM. And this might be the last time that we get to go under on a turnover bet. So I'm taking Luca under 4.5 turnovers, -142, but I'm putting 1.4 units on that to basically win a full unit back if this hits. It's a little bit unfair. It's a little bit disrespectful more than anything to be giving Luca 4.5 as his prop line for turnovers when he's gone under that number, under 5, I should say, in 70% of playoff games, under in 8 of his last 10 as well, because a couple of those overs for him in the turnover department were early on in the series against the Clippers, who also force a ton more turnovers than Boston. Boston forces the fewest turnovers in the league. So such was the case during the regular season. A little bit better in the playoffs in terms of getting those turnovers, but still not world beaters, right around like 11 or 12 that they force. So nothing that you really need to be worried about. Luca had a really bad game too, 8 turnovers in that game. Other than that, 3.5 turnovers in the playoffs in general, and that includes 2 7-turnover games as well, one against the Thunder, one against the Clips. So I really like him to continue to go under this number, even for that bad juice. Like, he only had 3 last game. I understand he didn't play the last roughly 4 minutes of the game with that offensive foul that he tried to take and then took a blocking call and lost. Obviously, then that was his 6th foul. So even though that was the case, the minutes were still super high for him. He still has the ball in his hands the whole time, but he's still making a lot smarter plays. And I think in grind time of game 4, we should be so lucky to get a game 7, that he's still going to be looking to take care of the ball, make sure that they get easy points and don't not even get a shot off in these possessions that he knows it's coming down to the finality of it all. So I think the mentality will continue to be, don't turn the ball over. The your turn, my turn stuff between he and Kyrie means he has a solid outlet. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands the whole game. There's another playmaker and scorer that can get his own shot up for Kyrie. So Luca will continue to not have to necessarily pass as much. Also, like, under the assists for him in this game because of the fact that he's not passing quite as much as he would if these teams were blitzing him. But we know Boston's staying home. That's a big part of why they don't force turnovers, is they don't really put that much pressure on the ball handler, which is Luca, which means not necessarily going to be able to force him into 5 turnovers in this one. And that is all the time that I have for you guys in this one. Appreciate you all following along. Definitely subscribe to that page. Want to mention, if you don't yet have an Outlier account, you can try it out. Risk-free, 7 days. It's a little 7-day trial for free for you. So this is what we're using on the live stream, like I mentioned earlier, 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday. This is the stuff that I'm taking you through, using Outlier predominantly as the program that we use as sort of our home base. Really, really solid tool. Go ahead and check it out. I'm going to be putting up a video before too long here showing you guys exactly how I use Outlier, but the live streams are a great sort of showcase for that, I should say, so that you can see how it's used. Make sure you're getting the most out of it. Also, remind you one more time about that Discord. It is live. Link is in the description of the video, so jump in there if you do want to come in and get some really good looks. The WNBA channel is popping off right now. A lot of really smart WNBA bettors in there, which I'm really, really happy to see, man, because it's helping me out a ton too, as I really strongly dive back into the W for this season. So make sure you jump into the description of the video so you get the links to everything that you might want to use. See ya at 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday. And until then, Happy betting.